Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. Have you ever stood in a room full of people feeling completely invisible? I have. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of our family's life, my sister Serena's wedding. Glittering chandeliers, endless white roses, tables that looked straight out of a bridal magazine. Everything sparkled, everyone smiled except me. I'm Elise. I'm 32, a mother, a sister, a daughter. But that day I was nobody, just a shadow at the edge of the room. No proper invitation, no warm greeting, no seat at the family table. When I finally got the courage to ask my mother where Isla, my daughter, and I should sit, she barely looked at me. She just whispered sharply, "Just keep your kid out of the photos, Elise. Serena's wedding isn't the place for distractions." Distractions, that's what my daughter and I had become to my own family. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. I didn't want Isla to see me cry, not today. She was only 10, standing next to me in her little lavender dress she had picked out weeks before, twirling the hem nervously between her fingers. She had been so excited to come. She had spent days making a card for Aunt Serena with glitter and hand-drawn hearts. She had even practiced calling Serena's new husband Uncle Nathan because she wanted to get it just right. I bent down and straightened Isla's dress, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. I smiled a fake, stretched-too-thin smile and said, "We're going to have a great time, sweetheart, just you watch." But deep down, my heart was breaking because it didn't matter how much I smiled. It didn't matter that I had been the one who drove Serena to her bridal fittings, listened to her rant about seating charts at midnight, reassured her when she panicked about her dress arriving late. None of it mattered now. The photographer was lining up the family for the big portrait. Serena and Nathan stood in the center, glowing with happiness. Lillian, my mother, fluffed Serena's train, making sure every bead sparkled under the camera lights. My father, George, posed proudly next to them. Bridesmaids gathered on one side, groomsmen on the other, and there I was, standing with Isla off to the side, watching, waiting for someone to say, "Come on, Elise, get in here." Waiting for someone to even glance in my direction. They didn't. The photographer waved a hand, shooing anyone not immediate family out of the shot. I opened my mouth to protest, but Lillian caught my eye and shook her head. Small, sharp, final. Isla tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy, why aren't we in the picture?" she whispered. I crouched down to her level, my throat tight because sometimes we just get to watch, honey, and that's okay. I lied to her face. I straightened up and clapped my hands together like we were about to start a fun game. "Let's go find some cake," I said, my voice falsely bright. But as we turned away, Isla kept glancing over her shoulder, confused, hurt blooming on her young face. I should have left. I should have grabbed Isla's hand and walked out of that ballroom without looking back. But part of me, some desperate aching part, wanted to believe things would get better as the night went on, that Serena would notice, that someone, anyone would see us. I didn't know then that it wouldn't be me who changed everything. It would be Isa, my 10-year-old daughter, who saw the injustice no one else dared to admit. My daughter who refused to let the people who hurt us write the ending of our story. And just when Serena and Nathan were about to share their first kiss as husband and wife, Isa did something I will never forget. She walked straight onto the stage, clutching her little tablet to her chest like a shield, and with the sweetest, strongest voice I have ever heard, she said, "Before you kiss, I think you should see this video." The entire room fell silent, and in that silence everything changed. Growing up, I always knew my place in the family. I was the dependable one, the fixer, the background character in everyone else's story. My younger sister Serena was the star. She had the sparkling smile, the endless compliments from relatives, the framed pictures on the mantel, and I was the one who stood just out of frame, clapping the loudest. I never resented her, not at first. I believed that's just how families worked. Someone had to be the strong one who patched things up quietly, the one who clapped even when nobody clapped for them. Our mother, Lillian, made it clear who she believed deserved the spotlight. When Serena forgot a school project, it was my fault for not helping her. When Serena failed a test, I was told I should have tutored her. When Serena got her first job, we threw a party. When I got mine, we ordered pizza and moved on. I convinced myself it didn't matter. I told myself the rewards didn't have to be visible. Love didn't always come in applause. But as we got older, the gaps between Serena and me widened. I got married young, quietly, to a good man named Adam. We had Isa 2 years later, a little miracle who stole my heart the second I saw her. Meanwhile, Serena lived in the city, throwing dinner parties, traveling to exotic places, collecting designer shoes like souvenirs. Every time she posted a new glamorous photo, my mother would call me, not to ask how I was doing, but to gush about how stunning Serena looked. Still, I clung to family, no matter how one-sided it felt. I showed up every birthday, every holiday, every random Tuesday when Serena needed help moving or a pep talk after a breakup. I was there because that's what you do for family. You show up even when they don't always show up for you. When Serena announced her engagement to Nathan, it didn't surprise me that she didn't call me first. I found out from a group text she sent to the family. The picture of the ring got more excitement from my mother than the news of ISA winning her school's art competition the same week. Still, I smiled. I sent a congratulatory text. I asked if she needed help. Lanning, she didn't answer. For 3 days, the official invitation didn't even come to my house. It arrived at my parents' place, addressed to the Lane family, as if Adam and I were just an afterthought. When I mentioned it to Lillian, she brushed it off. You know you're invited, stop being dramatic. A few days before the wedding, I called my mother to ask if there was anything we should know, times, seating arrangements, anything. That's when she sighed heavily and said almost offhandedly, just make sure Isla doesn't get in the way of the photos. Serena has a very specific aesthetic she's going for. I sat there holding the phone to my ear, stunned. My 10-year-old daughter a distraction? I nearly said we wouldn't come. I nearly hung up and never looked back. But then I looked at Isla, sitting at the kitchen table, carefully drawing hearts and stars on the homemade card she was making for Serena. She was humming to herself, totally unaware of the sharp words just thrown across the line. She deserved a family moment, even if it wasn't perfect. So I told my mother we would be there. The morning of the wedding, Isla was so excited she woke up at dawn. She laid out her dress, the lavender one she had picked herself after 3 different shopping trips. She wore the little white sandals she'd been saving for a special occasion. She even asked if she could wear a touch of lip gloss to look fancy. I took a deep breath and told her she looked beautiful because she did, and because no matter what happened that day, I needed her to know she was enough. As we drove to the venue, a sprawling sun-drenched estate about an hour away, I kept telling myself that today wasn't about me, it was about Serena. It was about family. We would sit quietly, smile, and support her. We would celebrate, even if we were standing on the outside looking in. But as we pulled into the long gravel driveway and I saw the glittering white tent, the swarms of stylish guests, the polished photographers snapping away, a pit formed in my stomach. I glanced at Isla in the rearview mirror. She was beaming, clutching her handmade card in both hands like it was a treasure. I smiled back at her, but inside I felt a storm starting to brew. Something told me this day wasn't going to go the way I had planned, and deep down, a small voice whispered, maybe it wasn't supposed to. When we stepped out of the car, the sun was already blazing down on the estate's endless green lawns. Guests in designer dresses and tailored suits floated toward the reception tent, laughing and snapping selfies against the backdrop of $1 million view. I held Isla's hand tightly as we made our way toward the check-in table. No one there recognized us. They glanced at the list, found my name halfway down, and handed me a standard white seating card without a word. I smiled stiffly and thanked them. Isla clutched my skirt, looking around wide-eyed. Are we late? She asked. No, baby, I said, smoothing down her hair. People drifted toward the cocktail hour. Lillian gave me a tight smile as she passed. Her voice was clipped. Thank you for understanding, she said. It's not personal, Serena just wanted everything perfect. Not personal. I nodded silently and turned back to Isla, who was busy plucking a flower petal from a nearby arrangement. Her little shoulders slumped. We found a small table near the back where Isla could sit and nibble on a plate of fruit and cheese. I picked up my own plate without tasting anything. I could feel the judgmental glances of strangers at our lonely little table. The final blow came when the speeches started. Toast after toast praised Serena's beauty, Nathan's charm, their perfect love story. Lillian got up and told funny stories about Serena's childhood, painting her as golden and beloved. There was no mention of me, not even a passing nod to my existence. As the toasts ended and the first dance was about to begin, I wiped at my eyes quickly, not wanting Isla to see. I had never felt so small, so foolish, so unwanted. I leaned down to Isla and said, maybe we should head out after the dance, sweetheart. But Isla shook her head, her little face set determined. No, Mommy, I have something to give them. It's important. I blinked at her, confused. Before I could ask what she meant, Isla slid off her chair, clutching her tablet tightly in her small hands, and started walking toward the stage. In that moment, the entire story shifted. At first, I thought Isla was just wandering closer to get a better look at the dance floor. It wasn't unusual for her to get curious, especially with so much excitement buzzing around her. But then I saw it, the determined set of her jaw, the way she clutched her tablet tight against her chest, moving with a purpose beyond her 10 years. I stood up quickly, my chair scraping against the floor. A few heads turned toward me, frowning at the sudden noise, but I barely noticed. My heart pounded in my ears as I wove through the crowd after her, whispering her name. Isla, wait, honey, come back here. She didn't stop. Instead, she made her way straight toward the DJ booth, a little island of black tables, cables, and soundboards nestled just beside the dance floor. The DJ, a young guy in a fitted suit and trendy glasses, looked down in surprise as Isla tapped him gently on the arm. "Excuse me, sir," she said, polite but firm. "I have something important for Aunt Serena and Uncle Nathan. It's a surprise. Can you help me show it?" The DJ blinked, caught completely off guard. He looked from Isla to me as I rushed over, breathless. "I'm so sorry," I said quickly, reaching for her hand. "She's just excited. We'll go back to our seat." But Isla tugged away, her big brown eyes locked on the DJ's. "Please," she said, "it's really special. Just 2 minutes, I promise." Something about her voice, so pure and so urgent, made the DJ pause. He glanced over at the wedding planner, who was checking her clipboard. Furiously, she didn't even notice the small drama unfolding. The DJ hesitated, then gave Isa a slow nod. "Okay, kid," he said, smiling a little. "Let's see what you've got." My heart dropped into my stomach. The DJ quickly connected Isa's tablet to the big screen that had been set up for the slideshow of Serena and Nathan's childhood photos. Meanwhile, across the floor, Serena and Nathan were finishing their pose dance, smiling radiantly as the photographer snapped away. Lillian hovered nearby, adjusting Serena's train again, making sure everything was picture perfect. They had no idea what was about to happen. The music faded out, and the crowd murmured in confusion. Heads turned toward the big screen as it flickered to life. I tried to pull Isa back toward me, but she shook her head fiercely, standing rooted to the spot, tiny and brave and shaking slightly. Then the video began. It wasn't a slick, professionally edited slideshow. It wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was real. The first image that appeared was a grainy cell phone clip of me holding a sobbing teenage Serena after one of her many breakups, rocking her gently on the front porch. Another clip showed me carrying heavy boxes up 3 flights of stairs to help her move into her first apartment while she filmed me and laughed. Another clip showed me sewing back together the hem of her graduation dress the night before her ceremony because the dry cleaner had botched it. Woven between the clips were short messages in Isa's handwriting: Aunt Serena's first helper, the sister who showed up, the person who loved her even when no one noticed. The room had gone completely still. I could feel my face burning. I wanted to run to grab Isa and disappear. This wasn't how I handled things. I didn't force people to look. I didn't demand attention. But Isa had. She had seen what I never dared to say, and she made sure everyone else saw it too. The final clip played, Serena crying in a hospital waiting room, me sitting beside her, holding her hand, mouthing words of comfort after a minor surgery that had scared her more than she admitted. The screen faded to black, then one last slide in Isa's neat handwriting. Family isn't about who stands in the center of the pictures. It's about who stands beside you when no one else does. Love, Isa. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. No clapping, no polite laughter, no staged smiles, just raw, open, unfiltered silence. I didn't know whether to grab Isa and run or to collapse into tears. But before I could move, before I could do anything, I heard Serena's voice cut through the quiet. "Elise, wait." I turned, and for the first time in years, I saw her face fully. No performance, no camera-ready grin. Just Serena, real, stripped bare, and she was crying. For a few seconds, it felt like the entire world stopped spinning. Serena stood frozen in the center of the dance floor, one hand still clinging to Nathan's arm, the other pressed against her mouth, her eyes wide and glistening with tears. The guests shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to do. Some stared at the screen as if willing it to change. Some glanced at Serena, waiting for her cue to laugh it off, to move on, to pretend the last few minutes hadn't happened. But Serena didn't pretend, not this time. She let go of Nathan's arm, stepping away from him slowly, her heels clicking on the polished floor like gunshots in the silence. "Elise," she said again, her voice cracking halfway through my name. I stood frozen, one hand clutching Isla's shoulder protectively. Part of me wanted to run, to spare Serena the embarrassment, to spare myself the humiliation of believing, even for 1 second, that this moment could heal what years of silence had broken. But Isla's small hand found mine and squeezed, so I stayed. Serena crossed the floor without caring who was watching, without smoothing her hair, without fixing her dress. She stopped right in front of me, her mascara starting to smudge under her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. She looked down at Isla, who gazed up at her fearlessly, then back at me. I was so caught up in everything I didn't see it. "I didn't see you." Her voice broke on the last word. Nathan came to stand quietly behind her, but he didn't interrupt. He just placed a steady hand on Serena's back, supporting her without pulling her away. The guests started to murmur softly, but I tuned them out. Right now it felt like there were only the three of us standing in a bubble of painful, beautiful honesty. Serena took a deep breath, reaching out her hands hesitantly, like she was afraid I might slap them away. "I'm sorry," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm so sorry for all the times I made you feel invisible. You deserved better from me." I felt my throat tighten. My instinct was to wave it off, to tell her it was fine, to make it easier for her. But Isla squeezed my hand again, grounding me, teaching me it wasn't fine, but maybe, just maybe, it could still be forgiven. Slowly, I reached out and took Serena's hands. They trembled slightly in mine. We stood there, clutching each other as if trying to bridge all the empty years with that single fragile touch. Then, without warning, Serena pulled me into a hug, a real hug, fierce and shaking and messy, the kind you only give to someone when you realize how close you came to losing them. Guests around us started clapping. It wasn't the polite, shallow applause that usually filled weddings. It was slow, tentative, and then stronger, real, and heartfelt. Someone sniffled behind me, someone else wiped their eyes. Even Lillian stood a few feet away, her lips pressed together, tears slipping down her carefully powdered cheeks. For the first time that day, maybe for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost at my own family's gathering. I felt seen. When Serena finally pulled back, she knelt down in front of Isla. "You're incredible," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for reminding me what matters." Isa blushed and looked at her shoes, suddenly shy. Serena smiled through her tears and stood up, turning toward the DJ booth. "Play it again," she called out. The DJ gave a small salute, grinning, and just like that, Isa's video started rolling once more. This time, when the images flickered across the screen, there were no awkward glances, no stiff backs or turned heads, only people watching, really watching, the story of a sister who had loved quietly and without condition. Nathan wrapped his arms around Serena from behind as they watched, and for the first time, Serena leaned back into the comfort instead of posing for the cameras. Lillian approached me after the second showing, awkward and stiff but genuine. "I didn't realize," she said simply. "I'm sorry, Elise. It wasn't perfect, it didn't erase everything, but it was a start, and somehow that was enough." The music started again, laughter and chatter resumed, but something had shifted. It wasn't just Serena's wedding anymore, it was a moment of real family, of real love, imperfect, messy, and honest, exactly the way it was meant to be. The night carried on, but it wasn't the same night we had walked into. Something fundamental had shifted, like a wound finally exposed to the air, beginning the slow, painful process of healing. After the second showing of Isa's video, the atmosphere changed. The walls that had seemed so polished, so rigid, softened. Conversations became a little less perfect, a little more real. People approached me with smiles that weren't tinged with pity or politeness. They asked about Isa, about me, about the years they had somehow missed. I was no longer invisible. Serena stayed close, barely leaving my side. She laughed with me, joked with me, made sure I was pulled into conversations and photos without a second thought. It felt strange at first, like wearing a new pair of shoes that hadn't been broken in yet. I kept waiting for the moment she would drift back to her shining world and leave me standing on the edges again, but she didn't. Even Lillian tried awkwardly, haltingly, but she tried. At one point, she found me near the dessert table, Isa happily piling a plate high with chocolate-covered strawberries. Lillian smoothed her dress nervously before speaking. "Elise, She paused as if searching for words. "I know I haven't always made you feel valued. I let myself get too caught up in appearances. I forgot what actually mattered." She looked at Isa, then her face softening. "I'm proud of you and of her. You raised a good girl." It wasn't a grand apology. It didn't magically erase the years of feeling lesser. But standing there, watching my mother's face shift from pride in my sister to pride in me, I realized something important. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the hurt. Maybe it was about choosing to move forward anyway, choosing not to let old wounds keep defining who we were. Later, as the evening wound down and Isa curled up beside me on a cushioned bench, too tired to keep her eyes open, Serena came to sit across from us. Her makeup had mostly worn away, her hair a little mussed from dancing. She looked less like the picture-perfect bride and more like the sister I used to know. "Can I tell you something?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "When I watched that video, it hit me how much I took you for granted. You were always there, Elise, always, and I just assumed you would be, like it was your job or something. I never realized how lucky I was." She smiled sadly. "I don't want to be that person anymore." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "You don't have to be," I said. She reached across the small table and squeezed my hand. In that small gesture, I felt years of resentment start to ease, not disappear completely, but loosen like tight knots finally beginning to untangle. That night, driving home with Isla fast asleep in the back seat, I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about how close I had come to walking away, about how a 10-year-old girl had shown more courage and clarity than most adults in that room. Isla hadn't made a scene out of anger. She hadn't demanded anything. She had simply told the truth, the kind of truth that, once spoken, could never be unseen. And somehow that had been enough to change everything. Looking at her peaceful face in the rearview mirror, a quiet smile spread across my own. My daughter didn't just stand up for me that night. She reminded me that love isn't about being in the center of the photo or having the loudest voice at the table. Love is quiet, steady, unshakable. It's the way you show up again and again, even when nobody's watching. It's the courage to speak when it would be easier to stay silent. It's the belief that even if you feel invisible sometimes, your love still matters. And sometimes, when you least expect it, someone you love will stand up and make sure the whole world finally sees you. As I pulled into our driveway and turned off the car, I whispered a silent thank you, not just to Isla, but to myself for staying, for showing up, for loving even when it hurt. Because in the end, love didn't just change my sister's wedding, it changed all of us forever. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched your heart or made you think about the quiet ways love shows up in your life, I'd love for you to let me know. Please like the video if it meant something to you. It helps more people find stories that matter. Share it with someone who might need a reminder that they're seen and loved, even when it doesn't always feel that way. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about the people in your life who have stood quietly by you the way my daughter stood by me. And if you'd like more real, honest stories about family, love, and the moments that change everything, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to share, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Thank you again for being here. I'll see you in the next.